This video was made possible by Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership so you can explore your creativity. This is Tatiana Calderon, and I know what you're thinking. Well, maybe not all of you, but I know what a lot of people will be thinking the moment that Calderon's name is blurted out loud. And let's just say, not a lot of it's good, to many. Calderon is a driver with seemingly endless amounts of money, but not much in the way of talent to back it up. Sounds kinda harsh, doesn't it? And if I'm honest, I was wondering if this was the case, as a glance at the record books will turn up one or two good results, followed by more zeros and a diabetic's basement. The reason why the issue is so prominent with Calderon is because she's currently signed on as a test driver for the Alfa Romeo Formula 1 team, and there are those who are touting her to be the first female to take part in a Formula 1 Grand Prix since Leila Lombardi competed in the 1976 Austrian Grand Prix. Look, I know you're not really following me here, okay? Question that I've got is whether or not Tatiana Calderon is anything special. Well, that's what we're all here to find out. So, let's get to it. Born in Colombia's capital Bogota, Calderon was inspired by Juan Pablo Montoya and his achievements in IndyCar and Formula 1. After visiting her local go-kart track, Calderon's first 5 minutes in a kart were enough to give her the bug of racing fever, and once she relayed this to her parents, she convinced them to enter her into the sport's more competitive environments. She had relative success in karting before making the transition into cars in 2009. It was also around this time that Calderon declared that she would not be going to university and instead pursuing a career in motorsport. Which is a tad ironic, given that university and motorsport are two sides of the same coin. You dump abhorrent amounts of money into it, and the only thing you get out of it is a piece of paper, and no guarantee of a job afterwards. After first competing in radicals for whatever reason, Calderon's first proper foray into racing cars came when she took part in the Star Mazda series in the United States in 2010. Calderon will be one of two full-time drivers for Juncos Racing, the other being Connor Daly. Now, Connor is good at driving racing cars, and he kinda proved this by winning the championship, with Calderon winning the remainder of the races. Actually, that is a complete lie. She didn't win anything. In fact, her best result throughout the year was a 7th place finish at the Autobahn Country Club in Illinois, a track constructed as a way of saying sorry for the fact the Chicago White Sox exist. But I mean, hey, I don't want to get off topic here. The point is that while Daly won the championship, Calderon finished in 10th place, where she beat everyone not worthy of a Wikipedia page. But given this was her first year in the game, you could forgive these results if by next season she had performed better. And sure enough, she would remain in the Star Mazda series with the same team for the next season. And while Calderon would lose out to one of her teammates in the overall standings, she would achieve podiums at Barber Motorsports Park and Mossport. She would finish 6th overall, ahead of teammate Gustavo Meneses, so overall, not too bad, I guess. By this time, she would work with drivers such as Derek Daly and Andy Suchek to improve her driving. And while the results attained the previous season weren't massively impressive, they weren't massively insulting either. At this stage, Calderon was on the path to IndyCar. But these ambitions wouldn't last very long.
You're on board with him, and one thing he was worried about going into this race was all that dirty air created by 34 cars.
But right now, the position he's in, he actually has a small advantage because everybody else is opening the air up in front of him, and he... Oh, here we go.
Trouble, contact, and a huge crash. Up in...
The crash that claimed Dan Wheldon's life at Las Vegas rocked the motor racing world. And ultimately, it's what drove Calderon away from the Indy racing scene, as her parents voiced their concerns about the oval racing scene. I mean, could you blame them? So the most logical avenue at this point was the European open wheel scene. She would compete in the European F3 Open Series on a part-time basis toward the end of 2011, where in the standings, she finished behind Jesus. Okay, Jesus, you pedantic But I mean, this was a part-time schedule in a brand new racing series in another part of the world. It takes time to develop these skills, especially under those circumstances. And really, that's applicable to pretty much anything in life, which is what makes Skillshare so amazing. See, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for creative and curious people. Through this platform, you can explore new skills and broaden your knowledge of existing passions. I have people ask me for tips all the time, whether it's video editing or animation. But frankly, if you want proper advice from people who who know what they're doing, Skillshare has that on offer. It's been useful for me too. I've been watching Christopher Rhodes' class on how to shoot a project without plunging yourself into too much financial woe. It's not just about how to save money here and there. It's a comprehensive review of the whole filmmaking process, which would be especially helpful to anyone out there looking to venture into making their own creative projects on a budget. And I mean, hey, this has been useful for me too in the projects that I've got coming up. There are heaps of classes for a wide variety of topics. There is likely something in there that will be of some value to you. Skillshare's affordability is very attractive too, with it being on offer for less than $10 a month with annual subscription. Subscription. I need to work on enunciation. If you're still undecided, you can get a taster of the platform. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will receive a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So thank you once again to Skillshare for their support on this video. Oh yeah, we were talking about Calderon, weren't we? Okay, well, so in her first full season of racing in the Euro F3 Open Series, she placed 9th overall, which wasn't too bad, if you ignore the fact that teammate Mans Grenhagen had finished in 3rd, with multiple wins to his name. Calderon didn't even have so much as a podium finish to her credit. She also competed in the last 2 rounds of the Formula Renault Alps Series, where her qualifying pace was okay, but her race pace left a lot to be desired. Heading into the 2013 season, Calderon competed in the Toyota Racing Series in New Zealand. Not much came out of it other than a 5th place in Taupo, but she did finish ahead of teammate Andrew Tang, who would go on to win the series in 2014. So I mean, that must count for something, right? In any case, this was all prep for the European and British F3 series, where she will be driving for RR Racing, alongside a driver who is one of the most feared competitors to ever come out of Asia. A driver who bows to nobody, who takes no prisoners, who is legendary in every respect. Sean Galal. And hey look, we can joke about Sean all we want, but the reality is he did manage to outscore Calderon in the European series that year. Although in the British one, Calderon would usurp Galal in the standings to finish 7th overall with a sole podium coming at the Nürburgring. I know it's Galal, but give credit where credit's due here. Heading into 2014, Calderon partook in the Florida Winter Series alongside a host of amazing up-and-coming talent, including Max Verstappen, Sir Lancelot, Antonio Fuoco, Nicholas Latifi, Raffaele Marcello, Ed Jones, and Will Buxton. Even though this wasn't much of a championship as they literally didn't count the points, Calderon did win a race at Sebring and proved to have decent pace throughout the 4-week venture. The primary focus of the season, however, was a second assault at the European F3 series. Only this time, she would be with Joe Zeller Racing and driving alongside Sandro Zeller. That meant 2 things were clear from the get-go: that Sandro was going to be the primary focus of the team and that he was still going to lose anyway. Alas, Calderon finished 15th in the standings with the best result of 5th, which came at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. She massively outpaced Sandro throughout the year, and her pace picked up as the season went on. Although heading into her 3rd season of F3, there was some amount of anticipation. No, anticipation is not the right word. What am I looking for? Anxiety, that's it! As she would be driving with Carlin, alongside George Russell and Callum Ilott for the 2015 season. While Russell and Ilott predictably did well in their rookie years, Calderon struggled to keep up, finishing 27th overall with no points to her credit. Although there was one race where she did show off her pace. Race 3 at Spa-Francorchamps. Calderon stormed through the pack to lead the race midway through proceedings, in what many would describe as an epic drive. However, she was running wet weather tyres, which worked well for the first few laps, but when the circuit began to dry up, she fell back down the pack and out of contention. Nonetheless, it was a valiant effort with some absolute commitment, although one wonders why this wasn't an overly common thing. Sure, the wet weather tyres had a part to play in it all, but she demonstrated some real tenacity that day. Well, come the off-season, Calderon would compete in the MRF Challenge Series in India, a spec series which is a fairly talented grid, some of the names being Pietro Fittipaldi, Harrison Newey, Max Futrell, and Nikita Troitsky, who, incidentally, I know nothing about. Nevertheless, Calderon did run up the front in this series, grabbing 7 podiums in the 14-race season, including a win in Dubai. She finished 2nd overall in the standings, behind Fittipaldi, and from the outside looking in at least, this looked as if she was improving to a level that would see her succeed on the main stage. Well, no, that didn't happen.
So either going to go, or...
Oh, well, yeah, the last one. Signing with the Arden team for 2016, Calderon's 2 teammates were Jake Dennis and Jack Aitken. The season did have its problems.
Shit.
While Dennis and Aiken would finish 4th and 5th respectively in the standings, Calderon would finish in 21st with only 2 points to her credit. In terms of qualifying pace, she was generally around a couple tenths away from her teammates in the beginning part of the year, sometimes beating them, but more often than not being behind them. Sometimes the gap will be larger, and in the races, she struggled to keep up. As the season drew on, the gap between them began to grow, some instances where there would be a second separating the two. Granted, it probably didn't help that she was struggling to find a good seating position in the car, which in turn meant she would be making contact with her legs while steering the car. I don't think I need to say this and that shouldn't happen. A part-time campaign in the Euro Formula Open Series was slightly better. Driving with Teo Martin Motorsport, Calderon would achieve a podium at the Red Bull Ring with strong pace throughout the weekend. And despite only racing for half the season, she finished in 9th place in the standings. Not a bad effort. I guess some will be wondering why the scrutiny around her performances. Why am I looking at her as if she should be performing better than simply being a mid-pack driver? Well, toward the end of 2016, Calderon was drafted into the Sauber F1 program and began work for them as a development driver. She would work with the Sauber simulator team and join them on the Grand Prix weekends. So at this stage, it was clear that Calderon was taking a serious look at Formula 1. And at this stage, results-wise at least, there was nothing to indicate she was ready for the main game. Whatever the case, Calderon will compete in the GP3 series for the 2017 season, this time driving with Dams. This season was strange, in that she would outpace teammate Bruno Baptista on the regular, but the third seat at Dams would be shared between 3 drivers: Mathieu Vaxivière, Dan Ticktum, and Santino Fedicini. In almost every instance, Calderon would be outpaced by these 3 drivers. Having said that, while Ticktum and Fedicini have certain reputations, they are quick. The Dams team really wasn't the fastest that year, but comparatively speaking, Calderon's 2017 performances were fine, I guess. And then at the end of the year, Calderon will be drafted in to drive the 3rd RP Motorsport car in the World Series. She put on a good performance in her maiden hit-out, taking a podium in her second race, beating her teammates Roy Nissany and Yu Kanemaru. Now, while this was no doubt awesome, the World Series was dying a slow death, with only 10 cars on the grid that weekend, and the talent level in that field was, kindest way I could put this was that half the grid was shit. But you got to play the hand you dealt with, and Calderon did prove she could beat people at least at that level. And so cometh the year 2018, and Calderon remains in GP3 for a 3rd attempt at, points. And now she was signed on with Genza. For this year, the point of reference for her pace will be in her teammate Juan Manuel Correa, because he was the only other full-time driver in that team. Now, while she wasn't far off, she was still being out-qualified on the regular. The last half of the season was impressive, as she would score points on most occasions, although when all was said and done, Calderon finished 16th on 11 points, while Correa finished 12th on 42 points. On paper, Calderon's GP3 venture was pretty uneventful, but there was promise heading into the next season. However, I'm not sure I would have picked her to be ready for the Formula 2 series. But that's exactly where she would go. Now, the Formula 2 Championship is already a pretty tough gig. The car isn't particularly nice with the rookies, and the level of competition in this series was pretty full on too. She had completed testing with Haruz in the previous year with decent results, but that was just testing. Those results are about as meaningless as the Driver of the Day award. For the 2019 season, she would sign on to race with Arden alongside Antoine Hubert. From the start, there were problems. Calderon described a lack of feeling within the car and was uncomfortable with the base setup. What this meant was that the pace relative to her teammate and the rest of the grid was pretty bad, and the only thing that prevented her season from being a total disaster was the national treasure that often trailed her by 2 seconds. Now, Hubert was an awesome driver, make no mistake. Calderon did have some tricky competition in that regard, and there were some highlight moments throughout the year, which included her leading a race in Baku, becoming the first woman to lead a race in Formula 2. But when you look at the season as a whole, it was pretty wretched. Based on results, it was becoming harder and harder to defend Calderon. So yeah, here we are, at the beginning of 2020, and Calderon is now at a very low ebb with the year that she just had. But rather than staying in Formula 2 for 2021, Calderon would venture into the ultra-competitive Super Formula Series in Japan. Driving with Drago Corsa, Calderon was now in a new car, in a new team, and now in a country where the 2 most popular sports involve pushing chonks and waving sticks. Now, in this series, she would be fighting a lone campaign with Drago, with no teammate there to help guide her, and with everything else thrown into the equation, it was always going to be a tough ask. The qualifying results on paper were rubbish, frankly.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
But her race pace was better, and got better as the season went on, as she began to understand how everything worked in the championship. She also competed that year in the 24-hour of Le Mans, alongside Sophia Flörsch and Betska Visser. I'm sure I said that one wrong, I'm sorry. A 9th place finish in class may not seem great to some, but given it was their Le Mans debut, and that year's greatly condensed schedule, it was a fine effort. But as she heads into 2021, still attached to the Alfa Romeo F1 program, we find ourselves at the question posed at the start of the video. Is Tatiana Calderon anything special? No. But, and this is crucial, that does not mean to say she's a bad driver. I'm sure some would disagree and say that her results speak volumes about her talent levels, but a results sheet can only tell you so much. By no means is she the greatest driver in the whole world, and the likelihood of getting to Formula 1 is slim given everything required to get there. But as a driver in general, she does deserve more respect than what she's being afforded. In Super Formula, she'll have an opportunity to demonstrate her worth, now that she's in a team that actually looks at her as a driver. But whatever the case, while I personally don't think she's worthy of an F1 seat, very few people in the world are worthy of a seat like that. But despite that, she doesn't deserve the hate dished out either. Perhaps in future events, given how everything is panning out, hopefully she can finally prove her worth on the bigger stage. Hopefully. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this video. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're awesome, and always remember, keep it respectful, be wholesome, don't be a menace, and as always, I'll see you all later.